It is 12:02. I think we're going to get started. Welcome, Christy. Welcome, participants. This is the first in our Sustainable Food Series. I'm Diane Imrie. I'm the Director of Sustainability for the UVM Health Network, and I want to introduce Christina Volbreck. Christy, otherwise known as Christy. Christy is a registered dietitian and a chef by training, and she is our chef educator as part of the culinary medicine team at UVM MC. And so, as part of our network commitment to environmental stewardship, we're offering education, engagement opportunities like this one. And we know that the foods that we buy and how we prepare them can have an impact on our environment. And so today you'll learn about how to use local and seasonal ingredients, how to use up the last of those storage crops, how to use whole ingredients. And then today's recipe will also highlight early spring greens, one of my favorites, and local dairy products. So, welcome, Christy. Let's get started. Anything you'd like to add as an introduction, or shall we jump in?
Yeah, Diane, thank you so much for coming up with this idea. Food and cooking and nutrition and sustainability are such a match made in heaven. So collaborating, I think is just a really good way to kind of be able to talk about food and cooking from a lot of different perspectives. So I'm excited to be here today. We have a wonderful recipe. I do have two cameras, so I'll be speaking to the camera in front of me, but I'll be showing close-ups and things like that to my computer over here. So if you want to see anything up close or have a request, feel free, and I'll try to make sure I'm doing a good job of showing everything to the camera. So yeah, let's dive in. The recipe that we chose to talk about today is lovingly referred to as the spring nor'easter because it features local ingredients that you can find in northern New York, in Vermont, in New Hampshire, Maine, the whole kind of Northeast region. We have a very different growing season than a lot of the country, right? We are farther north, so we have a shorter season. We have a colder, wetter spring, and it's mid-May, but I know most of us are just seeing sun for the first time. So a lot of the ingredients in the spring-focused salad are green because that's the first color that we see when we go outside. Right now it's green and yellow mostly, right? And I just found out that, and this might be a rumor, but I heard that UVM chose its green and gold colors because of fields of dandelion, and that's I know what I'm looking at on my drive-in. So, and I do just want to caveat that dandelions are malaligned. They're only a weed because they go places where you don't want them. But if you want them, they're officially not a weed anymore. So, and I'm talking about dandelions too because that's actually going to be the foundation of our salad today. So, does anyone recognize? I gave you a hint, right? But does anyone recognize this? It might look a little bit different than the ones that you have growing in your yard. But this is a dandelion green. This is a dandelion green that has been cultivated. So it's been made to be a little bit tender and juicier than the dandelions you find in your yard. But the dandelions in your yard are completely edible. I would recommend maybe avoiding dandelions that are near sidewalks where maybe you're walking your dog or in other places. But dandelions, the entire plant of the dandelion is edible. You can eat the roots, you can eat the greens, the flowers as well. We made a delicious dandelion flower ice cream last spring. And something that when we're talking about sustainability, when I think of sustainability, I think that often the first thing we think about is climate or electric vehicles. But sustainability has a lot of meanings, right? It's the ability to sustain. So in the kitchen, I also like to think about sustainability as food and recipes that are budget friendly, food and recipes that you have regular access to, that you don't have to go far out of your way to find the ingredients for. And in a lot of cases, that means focusing on ingredients that are grown locally and that are in season because they're available. And often they are easier to find and can be more affordable than trying to get produce that's flown in from out of country or out of state. So thinking about sustainability from a lot of different perspectives is something that in the kitchen, I think is really important for us. So, and also finding recipes that are easy on our bodies, right? If I was a professional chef for years and that wasn't a sustainable career for me because it was so much physical work. So we like to focus on recipes here in culinary medicine that are a little bit easier to approach. This is not advanced cooking, but it is, we do cover some of like the very basic foundations of cooking and things like that. So with all that being said, and I'm usually doing this in a room with people. So if you do, if anyone needs to unmute and turn this into a little bit of a conversation, please feel free to do that. Or if questions are coming in, Diane, feel free to jump in and interrupt me as we go.
Perfect. I've got my eye on the chat because I know when you can take a question and maybe when you're concentrating for a moment.
Perfect. All right. So we're gonna do a warm salad today. This is a salad I came up with one year, and then it's kind of it's a good base of a salad. It's a good concept that you can kind of use whatever you have in your refrigerator for. Today, we're gonna be using leeks, and I'll show this little side camera too, but I'll try to make it. So we've got leeks. We have our dandelion greens. And one thing I want to say is that with all types of dark leafy greens like kale or Swiss chard, if we're talking about reducing food waste and we're talking about cooking on a budget, there are ways to use the entire plant, right? You purchase this whole green, and usually we just take the green part off and we throw away or we compost our stems. But we're not going to do that today. Today we're going to actually use the whole green, and I did most of the work already for us. But I'm separating the stems and the leaf. And the leaves I'm just going to tear up and put in our bowl as for our salad. So you can see here we have our dandelion salad bowl. I'm going to try to highlight myself so I can see it. Make sure you all are seeing things right. And then for the stems, basically we treat these like we would an onion. So with the leek, I have the leek, both the greens and the white part of the leek, I've just chopped up, and we're going to combine that with this chopped up stem. And to start our salad, just like if you were starting a stew or a soup at home, we're just gonna saute them. The leeks and the stems, we're gonna saute them in some olive oil, some salt and pepper until they're soft. The thing about stems, there's a reason we don't always eat them. So I'm just gonna what do we see when I pull this stem here? Fiber, right? Those are all plant fibers. And this is what most of us are missing in our diets, is these plant fibers. So as a dietitian, as a nutritionist, I'm going to do everything I can do to make sure that I'm not throwing away the fiber. So that's another reason that we're going to utilize these green stems today. So it's so we don't have food waste. So we are using the whole plant that we spent money on. And it's also healthy for us. That being said, I don't want to chew on this. This is not a piece of food that I'd like to put in my mouth. But by cooking it like we would an onion, applying the heat is going to help break down those cell walls and make the plant more digestible, more edible, more delicious for our bodies. So I'm going to get that. I'm going to get that started. So I'm warming up my pan here. I'm just going to use olive oil. Olive oil it's a fantastic oil. It's full of healthy omega-3s, heart healthy oil. It is something that I consider if I'm going to use when I'm cooking. There are it's a all different types of cooking oils have different, let's say, ability to be heated without breaking down. It's called a smoke point. And olive oil has a lower smoke point, meaning that the higher the temperature, the more the oil breaks down and it loses all those heart healthy benefits. So my general rule of thumb and my recommendation for people who ask me about this is if I'm cooking over 400 degrees, I'll choose a different oil. Or if I'm going to be doing something like in a pan that's really hot, like if I was going to do a stir fry, I would choose an oil that has a little bit more durability to heat. But this we're going to be doing nice and slow, low and slow. We will be sauteing these leeks and these stems. So olive oil is an okay choice for this. That's probably one of the most common questions I get as a chef is what oil to use. You will see I'm not measuring anything. We do have this recipe written out and provided for you, which has measurements in it if that's the way you like to cook. But this is a very forgiving recipe. Mostly if you follow the general techniques, which I have listed here, we're just starting by sauteing these things. If you kind of follow the general steps, the actual amounts of what you're using don't quite matter. We'll be tasting as well, and that's how you usually know if it's going to go right for you, if it's how you want it. So I'm adding the leeks. And again, these beautiful cut up stems. Just dumping that right in. I'll season next with a little bit of salt. Salt is it's an important feature. It's an important ingredient of cooking, especially when we're talking about fibrous things. If you think about the structure of a plant cell, right? It's got a pretty tough cell wall and it has a lot of water inside. What salt does is actually helps to break that cell wall and release the water that's inside that cell. It also helps release the nutrients that are locked inside of that cell. So it's actually, while it does contribute to taste, it has a more of kind of a scientific or chemical, reason for being in the kitchen. Adding it now at this stage allows me to use the salt for its kind of scientific purpose. Whereas if you salt just your plate at the end of cooking, you're only getting that salt for its taste benefit. Salting throughout the process a little bit, just a pinch at a time, as you add new things to what you're cooking, actually helps you cook. So I think that's a pretty interesting kind of tidbit. I'm also going to add a pinch of black pepper here. And I'll keep an eye on this. And give it a stir every few minutes, but it's just going to do its own thing. You don't have to be worried about stirring it constantly or anything. While that's cooking, I'll just go through quickly what the other ingredients are. Earlier today, I took some delicious fresh asparagus. I didn't grow this, but I do have some at my house, not enough to share. So I did buy this at the store, but it is finally asparagus season. I don't know if any of you grow asparagus or have tried the difference between store-bought asparagus in January versus fresh from the ground asparagus right now, but it is magical. One of the things that we like to do in these types of engagements is talk about food memories. And usually it's just the first thing that pops to mind. And 9 times out of 10, the first story about food that comes to mind when I'm asked about it is the first time that I ever broke an asparagus spear from the ground and ate it immediately. And it was life-changing. So I do highly recommend that. Just watch out for slugs because someday that will be an unpleasant surprise. Do we have any questions or comments?
Christy, I have a question. How do you like to store your asparagus? Because I usually store mine in a container upright in the fridge if I can find room with some water at the bottom. Do you have any
Yeah.
other method?
That is fantastic. And I can kind of show what you're talking about. Well, we can pretend this is a bunch of asparagus. You get some sort of upright container like this. It can be a mug. It can be, you know, whatever you have in your kitchen. But placing the asparagus just upright and then putting a little bit of water at the bottom is a really, really good way. That's also how I store my herbs, actually, in my refrigerator. If I get a bunch of herbs, I'll keep them in their little rubber band, or I'll put a rubber band on them, and I'll store them exactly the same way with just about an inch of water at the bottom. And it really extends their life. It really extends their shelf life. That's a great point. Thank you.
Christy, just a quick time check. It's 12:19. So I know I promised to keep you on track.
Yes, we are looking great. So we have our roast asparagus. This recipe goes really, you can do a lot of things with it, but you know, we're coming out of winter. What do we have still laying around are our apples. So this recipe is a good way also, even if you make this like in March, to use up some of your leftover storage crops from the fall. So things like pears and apples go really well in this. If you like wheat, adding pears and apples to the saute process after a little bit actually releases more sweetness, more of that natural sweetness from the fruit. I personally like it fresh and crispy, so I'm not going to add that today. I'm going to add this as a garnish afterwards. And then the last 3 ingredients that we have are also our garnishes. I have just some pumpkin seeds or pepitas, however you like to call them, and sunflower seeds. And both of these are seeds that we can grow here in Vermont. I like to add seeds to my salads and frankly anything else for a lot of reasons. Mostly from a chef perspective, I like to add them for texture. Texture is a super underutilized and undervalued part of the eating experience. We talk about flavor all the time. We talk about texture a little bit less, but having something to crunch gives your mouth something to do. It gives your tongue something to explore, and it gives your brain something to think about. And it kind of also helps us be a little bit mindful when we're eating, because we have to, it's like an exercise almost. We have to pay attention to, oh, there's a seed, it's escaping, it's gonna go into my tooth and I gotta get it with my tongue. And it just kind of makes the whole eating experience a little bit more, a little more mindful, something you have to pay attention to. So I'm gonna see if I can just show you what's happening here in this pan by bringing this over. I wish you could smell this, but the green has gotten more green. The cell walls there are breaking down. We're accessing that chlorophyll. Chlorophyll, I like to I relate it to like blood. So if plant had blood, that would be the chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is where we find all of our magnesium. So green is good. We want that. This is cooked. The next step in this recipe, we're actually going to kind of make our salad dressing in this pan. And we're gonna then combine all of the ingredients and toss it so that the heat from the greens and the warm salad dressing will wilt our grains and make a nice kind of warm wilted salad. This goes, if you're making this at home, put a poached egg on top of this, or a fried egg, or even a hard-boiled egg if you want to add a little bit more protein. But it's a really, really lovely way to top this. So to make my salad dressing, we already have our oil. I'm going to add just a little bit more so that we have enough to kind of to coat the greens. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of maple syrup because we're Vermont. And then I have here apple cider vinegar. I'm just going to, it's called deglazing. I'm going to try to do something a little funny here. See if we can see what happens in this pan while I deglaze. It's less impressive without the noise, but you see basically like the adding that vinegar essentially is going to boil what's in there, and that helps catch all of the little crusty bits on the pan that we've created when we're doing the saute. So I'll stir this up. Oh, it smells really good. The acidity, a little bit of the sweetness from the maple. It's going to complement all of this really well. And we'll just toss this right in our bowl of greens. Try to do this over here. And we're going to add our roasted asparagus. Going to add some apple. Add some pumpkin seed. Some sunflower seeds. I'm going to give that a toss.
Christy, while you're tossing that, if you're having this for dinner guests, could you talk a little bit about any difference in timing that you would plan for, or would you do just the prep that you've done today?
Yeah, you could do this ahead of time. The great thing about the warm salad is that it's going to also be delicious room temperature. And it'll hold up because we're not using lettuce. So lettuce tends to wilt and get soggy. But since we're using a little bit more of a durable green, you could make this ahead of time and store it in the fridge and just take it out when you're ready to eat it. So I'm going to make a plate and show you the final result with our little bit of chev as well. We've got, dairy also gets a reputation, some medical conditions, but we have a wonderful dairy community here in Vermont. We have some really wonderful farmers doing incredible things with regenerative agriculture, and this is some very healthy chev. So if it tastes good, right? We'll make our little salad here. And I'd love to open it up to conversation.
Do you have any questions from anyone, any of the participants? I know I have a question for Christy. I was wondering about, so you have this personal and professional commitment to local foods. Can you tell us a little bit about like what brought you to that? A little bit about the why?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked in fine dining in Washington, D.C. And learned how to cook, with restaurants with amazing skills and made chefs with amazing just knowledge, and the techniques that we were using were scientific, and they were cutting edge, and they were incredible. And I kept watching these beautiful ingredients come into our kitchens, and we would process them so much that they were unrecognizable at the end, which, as a chef, that's sometimes part of your goal. There's a lot of chefs who are more interested in the modernist cuisine and making the kind of those crazy unexpected experiences, and there's room for that. But for me, I started missing the food. I kind of got disconnected from what the real food actually was. That, and in fine dining, when you need to serve a perfect looking plate that's identical every time, you end up with a lot of food waste, because you're getting a beautiful steak that you're cutting into a 1 by 1 cube, and then you have all that extra produce, and the food waste really got under my skin. I was also going through a period of caretaking for a sick family member, and becoming more interested in nutrition and food as a means to heal, both as a caretaker wanting to provide food for my loved one that was going to help nourish them, and also just seeing that the role that nutrition played in their health journey and how important that was. So I took a sabbatical from the kitchen and started vegetable farming. I did a season on an organic vegetable farm down in Southwest Virginia, where I had that experience with my fresh asparagus. And I'd been working with food for years at that point, and I'd never experienced something as delicious as a fresh picked piece of food. So that's kind of what started that journey for me.
Thank you, Christy. So we are in our last minute. If you could wrap us up, and while you're getting ready, I'm just going to pitch. July 9th is our second session, and we will be talking all about peas, actually one of my favorites.
And this wouldn't be a cooking class if it didn't end with a delicious, healthy bite of something amazing. I wish I could share this all with you. If anyone's at Fanny, run down to the Dunbar conference room. I'll have extra. Okay. So cheers. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, Christy. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining us. This was our first go at this. We've got 3 more that are planned, and who knows how many after that. So hope to see you all at the next one. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.